Hello and welcome to a very special edition of T3. We've got news on the announcement that all gamers have been waiting for. It is the Sony NGP, announced earlier this year, back in January, as the follow-up to the PSP, and it's getting its official airing at E3 next week. We will hear news on the games we're expecting to see at launch, the official name and the price. But our illustrious deputy editor Matt Hill has already had a play with it at a Sony preview event. So let's find out what he thought. So, Matt, you had the enviable privilege of having a go at the NGP before anyone else, but you also had a chance to catch up with Michael Denny, Senior VP of Sony Worldwide Studios. So before we come to you, let's find out what he had to say about the new console.
I mean, clearly since we launched PSP, that landscape has changed a lot, and the amount of games, the proliferation of games, as you say, smartphones and tabs that are out there, there's a lot more people aware of gaming. So we believe we can appeal to the core gamer, a core PlayStation gamer, but also maybe graduate up some of those new casual gamers who've experienced portable gaming through smartphones or tabs to try out our new experience.
So is it going to appeal to everyone, as Michael seems to think?
I think it's a bold aim. I mean, it's obviously a very good piece of kit. I only had a day to play around with it, but it's hardcore gamers are going to be very pleased from my initial trial of it. But I think mainstream, it's very big is the first thing that occurs to me. It's a centimetre wider than the original PSP. With smartphones kind of taking on gaming to like the masses, there's very much the fact that you can have it in your pocket at all times. And the NGP certainly isn't going to be in your pocket. I mean, it's the kind of thing you will carry around in your bag. But the advances for portable gaming are just very clear for all to see, really.
So it's just a really powerful game console that you have long train journeys and things?
Yeah, it's really powerful. I mean, it's quad core. It's got a double resolution of the original PSP. And so it's a 5-inch OLED screen, which kind of limits. But as well as that, it's got loads of control inputs, as in it's got the touch screen on the front. It's also there's a touch panel at the back, which interacts with games. There's 2 analog joysticks, which, if everyone remembers the original PSP, the beveled analog, and that was horrible and absolutely ripped up your fingers. These are lovely analogs. They're really, really nice, and they play as close as as anyone's ever seen, really, to the PS3 and how it plays. So it's a lovely piece of kit. I don't know about the weight because they were dev kits they were running and they didn't have batteries in, so they were running off the mains. It felt very light, and the word on the street is it's very light, but then they would say that. It'd be interesting to see what it's like once it's got a full battery pack in.
So you touched on the screen. Is it a huge difference to the PSP?
Well, the original PSP was 4.3 inches and this is 5 inches, which doesn't sound a lot, but it is actually quite sizable. You can feel the difference and you can see the difference. And the resolution's a big thing as well, being double the resolution. I mean, on something like Uncharted, which is obviously one of the big launch games, you can now see people in the distance, so you can accurately take them down like through the gun sights, whereas previously, shooters on the PSP, you'd have to very much be up close and you wouldn't be able to do that. So already advancements within the screen, and I think a lot of the NGP's future reliance on mainstream audiences will come down through watching films on the screen as well.
So you think it's going to be films as well and not just games?
Through PSN, I mean, it'll be doing PSN, everyone's favourite thing at the moment, but obviously through what that does, downloads the games, and it hooks up with the PS3 as well. It will do all of that, it accesses PSN.
So let's move on to the games. Now, you've already mentioned Uncharted. Was that the only game you had to play with?
No, they had plenty of games, not all of which we can talk about today. But the main ones were Uncharted, which is Golden Abyss, as it's called, which is not a prequel but set before Drake's Fortune.
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. But that was very good. It was a demo, but a very good gunplay. There's a few touchscreen elements put on which didn't seem necessary. You could just use the buttons, and they seem to be trying to make use of the touchscreen for the sake of it. But the graphics are stunning, like really, really, really strong. And the action is very good. It feels very good. It feels very much like the game on the PS3, which obviously it's not the game. The days of carrying away around your PS3 isn't quite there yet, but I mean, it's pretty close. I mean, it's getting surprisingly close. We also played a game called Little Deviants, which is a great name, but it's also like a mini game collection to get you used to the new inputs, because as well as a touchscreen, there's a touchscreen on the back, the 2 analogs, there's also an accelerometer and a gyroscope in there, so there's motion sensing as well. It's got AR as well. It's
got everything.
It's got everything. So Little Deviants literally is just to get you used to that. It's okay. It's some of the games are better. It's like a sketch show, hit and miss. Some of it's really good, some of it's not. We loved Reality Fighters, which sounded like a bit of a ropey concept in principle, but that was really, really good, which is, it takes kind of what the 3DS did with Face Raiders, where you kind of shoot into real life and the background is what's going on around you. But in this, it's like a Street Fighter style beat 'em up. You pick your character, you fight, and you can fight anywhere. But we were talking to the developer behind that, and the possibilities for that are brilliant, with geocaching, leaving things around so that you can have a fighter and you can wage them against somebody, so that whoever wins keeps them. Using Near, which is Sony's kind of GPS networking to find out if other people are playing near you.
Okay.
You could then play them. You could, and there's even talk of them. They're not definitely doing it, but there's talk of potentially you could film your bedroom and send it to somebody, and then fight in your bedroom.
You mentioned the controls in Little Deviants. So how did you find getting used to the new ways of controls?
Well, the analogs are amazing. I absolutely love the analogs, and I can't wait to play Call of Duty on it, and FIFA and all of those kind of games which absolutely need analogs. The touchscreen was good. We played one of the games we can't talk about, but was very good use of the touchscreens. The rear touch panel, I'm not so hot on. There's a game on Little Deviants which is basically like whack-a-mole, and things appear either front on or back on, and depending on which way, you have to tap either the front screen or the back screen. And I kept missing on the back screen all of the time. But then the guy that was demoing it, to be fair, said, you know, you're not used to it, and it will come with time. And there was another one of the games where I was like trying to move it like you would with like Super Monkey Ball with an accelerometer, but you actually needed to tap the screen. And he said to me, you know, like accelerometers weren't around like 5 years ago. You wouldn't have known to do that, but now you do. So I think it will just come with time. Obviously, we only had like, you know, half a day to spend on it. But I would say the rear touchscreen at the moment, what I'd like to see it do is something like FIFA or PES. If you could drag your players around with the back screen so you don't have to take your fingers off the controls, that would be a really, really good solution. It's interesting to see with these new inputs, when they've never been done before, it's interesting to see what people do with them. And I think, you know, potential's there for it to be good. At the moment, I'm not too hot on it, but...
What's the one game you look forward to playing? You've mentioned Call of Duty. Anything else?
I said to them on the day, when Call of Duty comes out, I mean, I can just see it sweeping up, really. I mean, if you can play online, on the move with the graphics and the controls as tight as that, I mean, that's got to be the one that everyone's waiting for, I'd imagine. I think the fact that they can do Uncharted speaks volumes about how far they've come with mobile gaming. And I think it's really interesting that, you know, smartphones are focusing on a very kind of different market, but like...
You're not going to get Doodle Jump on it.
You know, well, you could do. I mean, that's what the argument they will do, and obviously they'll be supplying... Vital for the NGP success is supplying cheap downloadable games. I mean, the 3DS isn't selling great, mainly because they haven't got the eShop up, I would say. So there isn't any downloadable games. The game's full price of £30. I think for a portable game, that's a lot of money nowadays. I think the NGP really needs to be... They need to sort out their marketing plan, which is maybe why they're taking a while. You know, we've played a unit. I mean, it's, you know, it's ready. Interesting to see, you know, tweaking it, and now they've got until like the end of the year to kind of tweak it and find out what's going to happen. But it's really vital they get the downloadable games at the right price and the right number available. So you could get Doodle Jump, you could play Doodle Jump on it. There's no reason not. But obviously, it will probably end up being quite an expensive unit just to play Doodle Jump on.
It would be really expensive. Right, 3 things you love about the Sony NGP. The
analog. Just anyone who will play it instantly will be just like, right, yeah, this is what I've been wanting. The screen is very, very impressive, just like so sharp. And I would say the feel, it feels familiar. It's a little bit in the way that the 3DS felt a bit like the DS. This feels a bit and looks a bit like the PSP, but it's just kind of all the things you didn't like about the PSP. This has improved. I could add a fourth one, which is the fact that they've done away with the UMDs. So now... it's flash-based storage cards and downloads, which I think is a really good way to go.
There was a big hoo-ha about that, wasn't
Absolutely, yeah.
And 3 things you hate.
Hate?
Let's go with dislike. We can say dislike.
I don't really hate anything about it at the moment. I mean, it's big. I'll go back to it again. It surprised me at the size of it.
How big?
I would say if you go home, it's slightly narrower and thinner than the original PSP, but it's actually taller. So if you kind of hold a PSP, it's vaguely in the same ballpark, but it's actually a little bit taller.
So it's comfortable to hold?
Oh, it's incredibly comfortable to hold, but then I often find that, I mean, for example, like mobile gaming is good for a certain type of gaming, but like actually the controls aren't perfect for certain things. The bigger the controller often, you know, it's a lot more comfortable. I mean, I'd rather play with a 3DS than I would with an iPod Touch, but the iPod Touch is a different type of controller. But this is very ergonomically designed, but it sacrifices portability for being a very nice thing to hold and play with. And that's always been the toss-up between that gaming companies have to think about. It's like, well, can it be really nice to feel and play, and you get a lot kind of tactility with it, but it's also got to be portable.
One of the things you didn't mention you hate was the price, because we have no idea.
We have no idea what the price is.
It's going to be announced in E3.
Well, we don't know it's going to be announced at E3. We don't know. It's going to be announced later in the year. The name's going to be announced at E3.
So we know the name's going to be announced
Yes.
at E3. Any word on the price?
They've said to me that they're not sure when they're going to announce the price. There's lots of rumours around at the moment, anything from £200 up to £400.
That's one of the big things about the PSP is the price compared to the DS, and a lot of people find that hard to swallow.
I think if they really want to make a splash and they really want to actually kind of hoover up the mainstream market, it needs to be below £250. I'm not convinced it will be. But I think between £200 and £250, if it's sub £200, I think it'll be a massive hit. If it's £200 to £250, I think it will do okay. I think it's over £250, you can buy a PS3 for cheaper than that. I don't see what the benefit is. Yeah.
So the name has just been going on and on.
It is.
So what have we had? We've had NGP, and that's not the official name.
No, Next Generation Portable, the NGP is a code name. It's not going to be called that.
So what other rumours we've had? We've had the PSP 2, some people have been calling it.
Yeah, I don't think they'll call it that. No. I can't see it then. There's one going around at the moment, which is the Vita. Again, this is just rumoured, like with the Project Cafe Wii 2 leak. You don't know how much of this is true and how much of this is not. So that's currently the name that everyone's touting around, but Sony won't confirm or deny, and they literally won't tell us until E3.
They're like indecisive parents.
They are, but I mean, I suppose it's a big thing. You can't just call it a PlayStation Portable 2.
No, you can't.
Well, because it's often perceived that the PSP didn't do very well, maybe Sony didn't want to associate themselves with the name anymore, hence the name change. But the irony being that the PSP actually did very well. It's just that it was dwarfed by Nintendo's success, and a lot of people forget that the PSP actually sold pretty well.
So let's get down to it. The Nintendo 3DS, the Sony NGP or whatever it's going to be called, or your old PSP, which one is it going to be?
I really like the 3DS, but it really needs a game injection right now because there just aren't enough games. The games are too expensive, and the downloadable games aren't there yet. So obviously it's launching at the start of June, their eShop. That'll be great, but it's going to take a while to get going. So at this point in time, I would choose an iPod Touch and wait to see what the NGP is going to deliver. I mean, the NGP is just, for hardcore gamers, it's where it's at. I mean, it seems to be taking what the things that 3DS kind of hinted at, like the AR stuff, and also the kind of the gyroscope and the kind of interactivity. But it's kind of like what the Move did with the Wii. It's kind of like taking them into slightly more adult pastures. So the older members of our audience will certainly prefer that, I think, to the 3DS's kind of jokey, kind of family fun type
Yeah,
thing.
definitely.
But it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But yeah, I mean, this present time, I think it's iPod Touch. I mean, I certainly wouldn't go anywhere near my PSP anymore, to be honest.
So your PSP done?
Done,
Relegated.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't, yeah. I mean, why would you anymore?
And are you going out to E3? You head into the biggest show on earth?
I'm not, unfortunately not. No, we're sending...
We'll have someone out there.
We're sending the bad boy Mike Saw out, T3's own roving reporter. He's going to be over there covering everything for T3.com and T3 the magazine and T3 iPad edition.
And the NGP press conference, when will we know? It's on...
It's on Monday afternoon American time. So I don't know what that equates in T3.com land to when this is on and how long that will be ahead.
It's in the evening.
Yeah, but Mikey Boy is going to report back for us, and so we'll have everything right here.